We've seen Socrates present the cyclical argument, which concluded that the living must come to be from the dead, and that this means that the soul must exist prior to birth. We've also gotten an idea of how the theory of forms works. In this argument, the recollection argument, Socrates deals with the forms and assumes that we agree that the forms must exist. Let's make this assumption and see what follows. Socrates makes the case that recollection cannot occur unless one already knows something beforehand. I cannot recollect the way my childhood friend's house smelled unless I knew what that house smelled like at one time. Similarly, with other things we are said to recollect, we must have known them at some point in the past and forgotten them in order to have recollected them. He then moves to the form of the equal. Let's start with a different example, however. Let's consider redness. So we see an array of objects we call red. But when we reflect on the matter, we admit that they don't all have identical shades of redness. One might be bright red, another might be burgundy, another fire engine red. Each of them is red, but not the same shade of red. Moreover, in different levels of lighting, some of them might even appear as non-red. A burgundy object might look black in low lighting. But as we saw in the podcast on forms, we know somehow that that object that looks black in low lighting is still red. We know this because the form of redness stays constant, even if red objects sometimes appear as non-red. We judge objects to be red based on our acquaintance with the form of redness. We see that the red objects are all trying to be, that is, aiming to be, that perfect form of red. That is what is meant when we say that we judge them to be red. Now, if we go all the way back to our first instance of judging an object to be red, say when we saw a red ball on the floor as children, we must already have been acquainted with the form of redness in order to do that. And granted, we might be said to recollect the form of redness, but this presumes that we had the knowledge before. But for someone to have knowledge, they must be able to say what they know and give a full account of it. Children are not able to do this. Therefore, it must be the case that they are not born with the knowledge of the form of redness. Thus, if the child is recollecting what was once known before, and what was known was not known at birth, it must have been known prior to birth, which means that the child's soul must have existed prior to birth.